Well, hello, God's beloved, mostly who attend Cloverdale Baptist Church, and welcome to Examining the Scriptures for November of 2021. This year seems to have gone so quickly, and we're almost into Christmas. Today, we have a special treat for you. It's one of the most precious passages in the Bible and one of the most precious verses in the Bible. And we want to not only memorize Ephesians 5, 1-2, but also to understand what we're memorizing and to understand it in context. And as you know, if you've been with our church during this time, if you look back, the book of Ephesians is a rich book, and the therefore that we have to begin this text forces us to look backwards. Therefore, in view of what's just been taught, in view of all of what's just been taught, here's how I want you to live. Here's who I want you to be like. And so we go back to the therefore. Keep in mind chapter 1, the supremacy of God, to the praise of his glorious grace. Chapter 2, the glory of the gospel and the Gentiles coming in, and the amazing thing that God does in us to make us his poimaia, his work of art. And then chapter 3, the love that is so transformative. And then applying all of that, chapter 4, this walking worthy of the call, and then the fleshing out of that in the local church and how that looks. And chapter 5 is almost a stop and then a continuation. You've heard the doctrine and you've heard the beauty and application of what this means personally in the church. Now we want to look forward and say, ideally, what do we want to become? And in chapter 6, if we were to go all the way forward, we're going to see the battle that ensues when we seek this. So this is really the core of how to live for Christ, or I suppose, even more importantly, how to be conformed to Christ. So what is the therefore? Therefore, in light of all that's been taught in the book of Ephesians at this point, be imitators of God. That is the goal, that conformity to the image of Christ, that desire to be like him in all we say and do. This whole idea, the Galatians 4:19, that Paul so strongly emphasizes, the goal of his ministry, or Colossians 1:28 and 29, the same idea. Listen, here it is for us. We desire to be those who look like God, who represent him as his ambassadors, who show others how awesome he is. And we do that to display the beauty of what it means to be a true disciple and the beauty of the gospel of grace. Now, notice he identifies us. This is for Christians or his children. He is our heavenly Father. Children is an interesting word, just so we understand in the context of this. Children is not only in terms of lineage, in fact, not primarily in terms of lineage in the New Testament, it's likeness. So when you hear the child of Satan, as an example, that means you're like him, not your lineage is him. In the same way, when we're a child of the King, we are a child of the King because we become like the King. So here is the therefore, in light of everything that's been taught so far in the book of Ephesians, be imitators of God. Now, I'm going to point this out to be Christ. We're going to see the deity of Christ here, but be imitators of God as beloved children. Now, what does that look like? Here's the joiner, and this is what you need to focus on. Listen, brother or sister, if you focus on holiness, I've often said that always includes, in fact, primarily includes humility, because you see the holiness of God. When you talk about holiness, it also will primarily include, and I know you shouldn't say that twice, a walk of love. As we talked a lot about at church already, this idea of walking is really just living your life. How should you live your life? And the answer is love. Well, love is a difficult word. Love could mean, well, I love Kraft Dinner, I love Lori, I love Cloverdale Baptist Church, I love Jesus. I mean, it's so varied in terms of what we mean. So this text won't allow us to understand it in any other way than the example of Jesus the Messiah. So here's the concept, and we'll finish the verses and then go back and repeat them and then try to live this out. We're to be imitators of God as beloved children and live, this is all of life, in love. How do you define that love? As Christ loved us. What does that mean? Well, the text is going to tell us. And gave himself, so love is an action of giving, self-sacrifice, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So I want us to notice three things about love. First, love is defined by the actions of Jesus. So if you want to know what love is in terms of how you're to live it out, read Romans 5 or read and understand the gospel. Do those sort of things and pursue it. Secondly, when you want to understand what love is, it has to be lived out as an action in relationship. I'm just going to put action in relationship. In other words, it's the love of Christ, the 3:14-21 of Ephesians, that will allow you to do this. And then thirdly, it is always when it's done in the context of who God is and what God has called us to, self-sacrificial. So the love of Jesus is the gift of God, of love to those who don't deserve it. And that, in its entirety, is a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. In other words, when you love like Jesus wants you to love, when you live in such a way, when you're walking in love as an imitator of God, you become a beautiful smell to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So Cloverdale Baptist Church, may I encourage you, memorize this verse. It is powerful and life-changing. Even more importantly, walk in it. Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Memorize, meditate, and let its massive message be something that is modeled to your heart and through your life to others. And that has been Examining the Scriptures for November 2021.